Most people don't fail loudly. They fail quietly, one small excuse at a time. Not because they couldn't, but because they convinced themselves it could wait. You think you need more motivation, more clarity, more time. But what you really need is less tolerance for your own negotiation. Excuses don't announce their damage. They whisper. They wear your voice. And if you're not careful, they will talk you out of everything you were meant to become. This isn't about doing more. It's about becoming someone who no longer explains the delay, because you either kill the excuse or the excuse kills your future. Kill the excuses, or they will kill your future. There is a moment in every person's life when they hear it. A voice quiet, practiced, familiar. The one that says it's not the right time. You're not ready yet. What if you fail? It sounds like caution. It feels like logic, but it is death wearing a polite disguise. Excuses don't come with warning labels. They don't announce themselves as the thing standing between you and the life you were meant to build. They sound reasonable. They sound protective. They sound just like you. And if you don't learn how to kill them, they will bury your future. One justified delay at a time. Excuses are not noise. They are systems, refined through repetition, sharpened over years of survival, programmed into your mind by experience, by fear, by people who meant well but never left the waiting room of their own potential. And if you keep letting them speak for you, you won't need to be defeated. You'll do it yourself. You'll become the master of almost, of one day, of brilliant plans that never leave your notebook, of dreams you had the talent for, but not the conviction. Let's be clear. Excuses don't care about your vision. They don't care about your goals. They only care about keeping you exactly where you are. They are the chains dressed as comfort, the leash around your ambition, the slow, quiet erosion of belief disguised as being realistic. And the longer you entertain them, the more they become your identity. You don't just use excuses, you start to live inside them. You start to say things like, "That's just who I am. I've always been like this. I'm just not built for that." But you weren't born that way. You were trained. And now it's time to untrain yourself before your potential becomes a tombstone that reads, "They had everything," but kept explaining it away. You say you want freedom, but how can you have freedom if you keep negotiating with limitation? You say you want greatness, but how can you touch it if you keep giving away your power to excuses that have never paid you back? Think about it. What has not felt ready ever earned you? What has waiting for the right time ever built? What has hesitation ever returned to your life except smaller dreams, missed chances, and delayed confidence? Excuses will rob you of decades, and they'll leave you wondering how you got here. But you won't remember the 1,000 little moments you handed your power away. You'll just see a gap between who you are and who you could have become. And here's the part most people never tell you. You don't outgrow excuses. You kill them. You look them in the eye, strip them of their justifications, and choose movement anyway. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the only way to silence the voice of "I can't" is to prove it wrong. Daily, deliberately, relentlessly. This is the truth they never taught you in school. Excuses are not passive. They're predatory. They wait for you to get tired. They wait for you to scroll. They wait for you to feel just uncertain enough to ask, "Should I even do this?" And in that tiny crack, they whisper, "Maybe not today." And it sounds so small, so harmless. But that one sentence, that one compromise, it becomes a blueprint, a neurological pathway, a reinforced behavior that your mind will default to every time the pressure comes. And that's the war. It's not out there, it's in here. Not between you and the world, but between your vision and your reflexes. Between the part of you that knows you're meant for more and the part of you that's terrified to prove it. Because here's what excuses really protect your fear of what might happen if you gave it everything and still failed. So instead, you're half-try. You wait. You play small. You convince yourself that you're just being patient. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not waiting. You're stalling. And excuses have become your weapon of self-preservation. But here's what no one tells you. Failure doesn't kill dreams. Delay does. Because delay drains belief. It dulls urgency. It buries clarity under layers of maybe later. And the longer you wait, the more convincing your excuses become. You start mistaking them for personality. You start mistaking them for identity. You start mistaking inaction for intelligence. But intelligence without execution is just mental gymnastics. And dreams without action are just decorated regrets. So what do? You move. You start. You execute before the excuse has time to speak. You install systems that leave no space for negotiation. You surround yourself with people who hold you to the highest standard, not the softest story. You wake up not to feel inspired, but to become someone who doesn't need to be. Because this is the truth most won't admit. The difference between people who succeed and those who don't is not talent. It's not luck. It's not knowledge. It's that the ones who rise kill their excuses early. They move before they feel ready. They act while others overthink. They finish what others keep starting over. And over time, the mind adapts. The reflexes change. The old programming gets replaced by something far more dangerous to mediocrity: self-command. Because when you start to trust yourself, excuses lose their power. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need external motivation. You don't need to feel like it. You do it because you said you would. And eventually, that becomes who you are. If what you just heard made you nod in agreement, please like and share with someone who needs a ray of light today. You don't fix your life by fixing in your circumstances. You fix it by fixing the reflex that wants to escape them. Because excuses don't live in the world, they live in your responses. They live in the moment you hesitate, the breath before action, the pause before the yes. And if you don't master that gap, you will always be ruled by what sounds safe rather than what moves you forward. This is why talent alone is never enough. Because if you put a powerful engine in a car that always pulls the handbrake, it doesn't matter how fast it could go, it stays parked. And that's what excuses do. They keep you parked in a life that was meant to be driven hard, far, all the way to your potential. But instead, you're sitting there, engine humming, wondering why it still doesn't feel like momentum. And you know what's even more dangerous than a loud excuse? A quiet one. The one that dresses itself up as logic. The one that tells you to wait just one more week. The one that convinces you to pause while someone else moves. You call it timing. You call it strategy. But really, it's fear. Wearing your own voice. That's why it's so hard to detect. Because it sounds familiar. It sounds like you. But make no mistake, if the voice is keeping you from execution, it is not your ally. Because here's the brutal truth. Excuses don't need to be true. They just need to be loud enough to delay your action. And every time you delay, your brain celebrates it. Not because it's right, but because it's safe. Because delay feels familiar, and the mind loves the familiar even if it's killing your future. You think you're protecting yourself from discomfort. But what you're really doing is rehearsing defeat, over and over, until excuses become the operating system, and try becomes a euphemism for never. That's the hidden cost no one talks about, the cost of almost, because almost doesn't pay, almost doesn't build, almost never compounds, and almost, when lived long enough, turns into regret so sharp you can't breathe. So when people ask, why are you so intense, let them ask. Let them stay casual. Let them float in indecision. Let them decorate their reasons. But you're here to build. You're here to move. You're here to create a future so undeniable that your former excuses don't even recognize you. Because, make no mistake, the most dangerous habit in the world is explaining why you're not executing. It sounds harmless. It sounds like self-awareness. But it becomes an addiction. You keep talking about why you're stuck, instead of moving through the thing that would free you. And every time you say, "I just need a little more time," or "I'm working on my mindset," you buy yourself one more day of delay and sell one more piece of your destiny. At some point, you have to choose excuses or execution, but never both. Because the longer you feed excuses, the more they evolve. They get smarter. They start sounding like compassion. They start sounding like boundaries. They start convincing you that quitting is self-care. But real self-care is building the life you don't have to escape from. It's keeping the promises that make you proud when no one is clapping. It's choosing the hard thing now so you don't live a soft life later. And yes, it's hard. But you know what else is hard? Being 5 years from now with the same story, the same habits, the same excuses, and a life that hasn't moved. So what if just for today, you stopped explaining? What if you didn't justify the delay? What if you just executed not perfectly, but with force, with urgency, with the quiet violence of someone who's done waiting for a permission slip that's never coming? Because the truth is, no one is coming to save you from your excuses. They'll nod when you tell them why you can't. They'll agree when you say it's hard. They'll support your story because your story sounds just like theirs. But here's what they won't do. They won't build your future. That's on you. So if you're going to live this life, you might as well live it without brakes, without filters, without the slow death of maybe later. Because every time you execute, you send a signal to your future, "I am ready to meet you." Not someday now. You want confidence, you earn it. You want momentum. Start it. You want belief. Prove it with reps, not reasons. Because the gap between who you are and who you could be is not filled with more books, more podcasts, more plans. It's filled with actions that no excuse can survive. Excuses are comfortable. That's why they survive. They're soft. They give you a way out. They wrap themselves around your fear and call it logic. But deep down, you know what they are: a cage with velvet walls. You can decorate it. You can justify it. You can call it self-care balance being realistic. But it's still a cage. And the only way out is war. Not with the world, with yourself. The part of you that hesitates. The part that wants comfort more than change. The part that would rather feel safe than become unstoppable. And here's the thing. They never say out loud. The best in the world isn't always the smartest. They're the ones who moved anyway. They had the same fear, the same doubt, the same resistance. But they didn't coddle it. They out-executed it. Every day, every rep, every uncomfortable hour spent building something while their excuses screamed at them to stop. They weren't born without fear. They just learned to move through it faster than most people argue with it. That's the identity shift. That's what separates the average from the great speed of execution. Not perfection. Not clarity. Not some massive spark of inspiration. Just less time between idea and action. Less space for the excuse to grow roots. Because every second you hesitate, you feed the doubt. You give it oxygen. You give it leverage. And it will use your intelligence against you. It'll build the perfect case for doing nothing. And you'll believe it, because it sounds smart, because it sounds like you. But you're not here to sound smart. You're here to build something real. And real is messy. Real is hard. Real doesn't have room for endless preparation. Real requires movement before comfort. It's not about how clean your to-do list looks. It's about how many uncomfortable actions you're willing to take without needing to feel ready first. Because the truth is, if you need to feel perfect to start, you'll be waiting your whole life. If you need certainty to move, you'll never go anywhere worth reaching. And if you keep letting your emotions vote on your actions, you will never lead your own future. You say you want discipline. You say you want results. But do you want them more than your reasons? Because eventually, you have to pick one: your growth or your story. You can't have both. You can't be both the architect of your new life and the loyal defender of your limitations. At some point, you have to stop being the lawyer for your excuses and start being the soldier for your standard. Because standards don't negotiate. Standards don't adapt to moods. Standards command respect, especially from the part of you that wants to quit. So the next time the excuse shows up, don't explain it. Execute through it. The next time you don't feel like it, don't wait to feel better. Train your body to move before the feeling arrives. Because once you do that enough times, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You stop needing motivation. You stop asking for alignment. You become the alignment. You don't have to get in the mood. You are the mood. You are the standard. You are the system. You are the structure that no longer folds when pressure shows up. And you know what happens then? Your brain rewires. Your patterns change. Your self-respect compounds. Because now you're not just talking like a winner. You're building proof that you are one. And excuses can't live in that kind of environment. They suffocate in the presence of evidence. They die when you show them not once but daily that their voice no longer matters. They die when you prove that execution is your new oxygen. That's the new identity. Not someone who's trying to be consistent, but someone who no longer allows inconsistency in the building. Not someone who's working on it, but someone who executes whether it's convenient or not. And when people ask how you changed, you won't need to explain. They'll see it in your posture. They'll hear it in your voice. They'll feel it in your presence. Because when the excuses die, what's left is a version of you that was always waiting, just beyond the noise. So ask yourself right now, what have my excuses cost me? Not in theory, in reality. What opportunity slipped past because I paused when I should have pounced? What door never opened because I was still preparing to knock? What version of me never lived because I chose the excuse that kept me safe? And if you don't like the answer, good. That means there's still time. That means you still have leverage. That means you still have something to fight for. But not later, now. Because the more time you give an excuse, the stronger it gets. So kill it. Not gently, not respectfully, violently. Rip it out of your language. Tear it from your body. Refuse to wear its identity one day longer. You don't need to ease out of the life that's suffocating you. You need to burn the bridge and run forward like it's the only option left. Because it is. This is your shot, and it's not going to wait. There's a moment in the life of every builder, every doer, every disciplined warrior when they stop asking, "How do I stop making excuses?" and instead ask, "How do I eliminate the space where excuses live?" Because by then you know the truth. Excuses don't survive in movement. They survive in gaps. Gaps between decision and action. Gaps between intention and implementation. Gaps between what you say you want and what you're actually committed to doing. You don't beat excuses by yelling louder. You beat them by removing the space they grow in. And that means systems. That means schedule. That means rhythm so tight and so intentional that there's no opening left for second guessing. The world doesn't need more people trying. It needs people who execute without debate. People whose days are built around non-negotiables, not feelings. Because when you live by structure, you don't need motivation. You don't even need confidence. You just need to show up because showing up is what you do now. You've made it your identity. And identity doesn't argue. It acts. Let's get specific. What's in your morning? Because if you're serious about killing your excuses, your first hour cannot be random. It cannot be chaos. It cannot be consumed by noise. Because the way you start the day is the way your brain gets trained to interpret pressure, to handle resistance, to respond to friction. So if your morning is soft, you will be soft. But if your morning is deliberate discipline, silence, motion, gratitude, planning, you hardwire excellence into your default setting. And that's how you kill excuses before they even wake up. And what about your body? You think this is just mental. It's physical. Your ability to act when you don't feel like it starts in your body. Because your body is the first place resistance shows up, and the first place you can train yourself to push anyway. You don't go to the gym for aesthetics. You go because discipline is built in reps. And when your muscles start responding, your mind does too. Because motion creates momentum. And momentum is where excuses drown. You want to eliminate hesitation, then eliminate the negotiation. Remove the option to delay. Decide once, then act like it's already law. Because the strongest people you know, they don't make decisions daily. They made one years ago, and everything since has been a reflection of that choice. That's why their discipline looks effortless. It's not that they don't feel resistance. It's that they've built a life where resistance has no vote. You can do the same. You can build a rhythm so undeniable that even on your worst day you outperform most people's best. Because you've trained your excuses to lose their voice. You've trained your mind to obey purpose, not pressure, not emotion, not fatigue. Purpose. This is where real power begins. When you no longer chase the feeling of ready because you know ready is a byproduct of movement, you move first, you align later. And that habit rewires your life. No one tells you this. You don't become unstoppable by being perfect. You become unstoppable by being non-negotiable. You still mess up. You still fall short. But you never let that failure stop the system. You don't spiral. You reset. You miss a rep. You double the next one. You skip a morning, you win the evening. You slip once, but you don't break twice. Because discipline is no longer what you do. It's who you are. And people who live from identity don't need to stay motivated. They just need to remember what they said they were. So what did you say? What did you promise? What standard did you commit to? Not when you were inspired, but when you were clear. Because clarity is a higher fuel than hype. And if you can move from clarity, not from emotion, you're already ahead of 95% of the world. That's the new reflex you're building. One where your excuses don't even get airtime. Because you've removed the luxury of quitting. Because you've stopped entertaining weakness. Because you've burned the escape hatch, sealed the back door, and trained your mind to respond to a new command. We move now, and the more you repeat that, the more your entire system adapts. Your thoughts shift, your habits crystallize, your voice deepens not literally, but energetically. People feel something different when you speak. Because now you speak from proof. You move from pattern. You walk with evidence and excuses. They stop even trying because they know you don't listen anymore. That's the day everything changes. Not when you win, but when you stop needing excuses to fail. That's when you reclaim your life. That's when you become dangerous. That's when your future, the one that's been waiting, starts to make its way toward you. Not because of what you dreamed, but because of what you refuse to excuse anymore. Before we go any further, let me know what you think. Like and share if you think this content deserves to reach more people. This is the line, right here. The one between the life you tolerate and the life you were born to build. One side is crowded. It's full of people with great ideas, better intentions, and a mountain of reasons why they couldn't. The other side quiet. But it's where the builders live, the finishers. The few who looked their fear in the face and said, not one more day. Not one more day of negotiating with comfort. Not one more day of calling their weakness balance. Not one more day of living under the rule of a voice that never wanted them to win. They didn't get stronger overnight. They just got sick of listening to lies in their own voice. And that's the moment everything shifts. The day you stop seeking permission. The day you stop asking the excuse to sit at your table. The day you become someone who doesn't flinch when it's time to move. Because once you cross that line, you don't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow your strength. You can't unlive the evidence that says you're capable. You always were. It wasn't ability that held you back. It was story. It was language. It was the lie repeated so many times that you mistook it for identity. But now the lie is dying, and something else is taking its place. Something fierce, something unshakable, something so locked in that even your excuses, when they try to whisper, don't find an open door anymore. Because you sealed it shut. With reps, with rhythm, with one small daily choice: I don't stop. Not for fear, not for fatigue, not for the past, not for the people who don't believe in it yet, because this version of you doesn't need a vote. This version of you leads. And leadership starts here not with applause, not with clarity, but with the decision to act without needing either. You lead by being the one who no longer explains the delay. You lead by becoming the one who executes in silence. You lead by removing the option to back out. You've burned the bridge, and now you walk forward because there's nothing left behind you worth revisiting. Let the old self wonder where you went. Let the past knock. Let it beg for your attention. You've outgrown the version of you that made room for excuses. You're not who you used to be. You don't need the pity party. You don't need the applause. You don't even need the recognition. You've got something better. Proof. Standards. Silence that screams, I'm not coming back. You don't have to tell people what changed. They'll feel it in your discipline. They'll see it in your habits. They'll notice it in your peace. Because people who kill their excuses move differently. They breathe deeper. They walk taller. They command time, energy, attention, not because they yell, but because they embody. And from this day forward, that's who you are now. The one who moves without delay. The one who acts without apology. The one who rises without excuse. You've rewritten the code. You've closed the gap. You've burned the script of the old identity. And when you look in the mirror now, you don't see someone trying to believe. You see someone who already does. And belief, when backed by daily execution, becomes something unbreakable. It becomes truth. So breathe it in. That silence, that stillness. That's what power feels like when it's no longer wasted, explaining what you should have already done. That's what happens when your excuses die and you decide to live. Fully, fiercely, finally. Kill the excuses. Bury them deep. Let them rot in the soil of who you used to be. Because your future isn't waiting. It's watching, and it only opens for those brave enough to shut every door that leads back. The next time you hear that voice, the one that says later, maybe not today, it's not the right time. Remember this, excuses sound most convincing right before a breakthrough. They'll show up soft, gentle, reasonable. But they don't come to protect you. They come to preserve who you used to be. And if you keep entertaining them, they won't just slow you down. They'll write your story, one sentence at a time, until one day you look back and realize the only thing that stood between you and the life you wanted was the excuse you kept feeding. So decide now before the voice returns, before the hesitation grows roots, before another day slips by perfectly rationalized. Excuses are clever, but so are you. And now, you know better. So move, while the door's still open, while the fire's still warm, while the version of you that never needed an excuse is still within reach.